Guys, a very warm welcome to our third May Wine Month session for 2024. And today, I'm just going to quickly share up on screen the planner for the month. So today we are joined by Jean-Frédéric from Hugel, who's going to talk to us about all things Hugel. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation there, but we'll be taught how to say it properly in just a moment. Obviously, I did touch a little bit about familiar Hugel on Wednesday when we gave the introduction to Alsace session. But today we're going to learn from the master and a member of the family. So without further ado, I will hand over to Jean-Frédéric. Please make sure everyone is on mute. If you have any questions, we'll make sure we save some time for them at the end. Alternatively, you can pop them into the chat. But without further ado, I'll hand over.
Thank you very much. Well, once again, be free to use the chat. The idea is that I answer as much of your questions as possible, making the complex topic of Alsace as simple as possible as well. So don't hesitate to use the chat and give me feedback and a little bit of questions on what on the current topic. So I'm Jean-Frédéric Hugel. I'm part of the 13th generation of the Hugel family. We've been making wine in the same town under the same name for now 384 consecutive vintages. We're not necessarily fast learners, but we compensate that with a little bit of experience. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of who we are and especially where we are. You've just apparently done a first session on Alsace. So we're not far from Trimbach, that I guess was showing you the wines yesterday. We're about 5 minutes. So central part of Alsace, in a tiny little place called Rigvier. If you've never been here, I strongly recommend you do. I'll just be going on and off with a presentation. So I'll be using it, and at the same time trying not to bore you with too much visuals. But in a matter of a few words, this is Rigvier. This is my little hometown. 1,100 inhabitants as we speak, and I'm currently sitting in a building that is probably older than every person most definitely older than every person in this room, unless you're 200 years old. And so we are in one of the most picturesque little areas of the world. This is Rigvier actually in 1643. So believe it or not, the family had been running the winery already for 4 years when that sketch was drawn. Obviously, it's not a photograph. It's a drawing. So drawing on fusain on carbon drawing. And if you came to visit us today, you would pretty much find Rigvier exactly the way it shows on that drawing. We are still located in the center of this middle-aged city, in an area that has been producing wine for the past pretty much 2 decades, 2 centuries, 2 millennaries, 2,000 years. As very often with viticulture, the Romans have been bringing us the vine. It's been very well accepted and welcomed here. And since then we've been growing grapes. We've been growing grapes, making wine, and this town, pretty much what you see here on that drawing, is still existing today. We are still one of those places where history very much intertwines with wine, and where viticulture is the main economy. So obviously today it's been more or less equaled by tourism. We're only 1,100 inhabitants, but we welcome close to 3 million visitors a year, making Rigvier one of the most visited places, and especially of its size, in France. So Hugel, first of all, if that wasn't clear enough with the logo Family Hugel, we're a family company. We're a family winery. I'm part of the 13th generation. My cousin and I run the company. I'm more on the sales and marketing side, and my cousin more on the technical side. I say more on because we're a small company. We're about 25 employees. Everybody wears many hats. So you have to be ready to do a lot of things when you join in the company. You pretty much join Hugel the way you join the way you adopt a religion. So you have to be able to abandon everything and abandon yourself to the family story and the family estate. So we've been running that company for now. So it's been family owned, father to son, for now 384 years. We are one of those few wineries. So we're members of Premium Famille Vini, which would be the case with our friends from Symington, Paul Roger, Egon Müller, Torres, of course, and 12 family companies, family members, family run companies. And we are one of the ambassadors of Alsace across the world. And we are also responsible for your Gewürztraminer Classic that you should have on your wine list, which I have a glass of right here, which I will be possibly not sipping because I guess you'll ask me to speak in a sober manner, which I'm trying very hardly to do. The idea behind this session here is to give you a few more clues and tells on how to pair this wine, how to use it, how to present it to your customers, and make sure you direct the right wine to the right person. Regarding just before talking about the wine itself, let's maybe talk a little bit about Alsace as a region. So I'll put my PowerPoint back on. I apologize; it's not the most fascinating and pretty looking PowerPoint, but it's pretty useful. So we're obviously in Alsace. You've had your session on Alsace recently, so that is all familiar to you. And in terms of Hugel, we're in the very central part. We're the very central part of the region, and that pretty much means we're in a very temperate region, dry climate, so semi-continental climate, which means typically quite low rainfalls, warmer temperatures than most wine regions at that latitude, which makes us white wine specialists. The region produces about 90+% of white wines, amongst others, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Muscat. So typically quite aromatic grapes, with exceptions. You know France. We are actually quite specialists at exceptions. That's what we do best. Typically, we actually set up rules mainly to have exceptions to it. That is the only reason we have rules in France, to have exceptions. The region itself is actually the wine region itself. It's actually a long strip of land, about 100 kilometers from north to south, which means that typically you would have very different picking times, levels of ripeness, and the conditions might be very different from one area to the other. I'll take an example. There was a pretty bitter frost in Alsace 5 nights ago, and we are amongst the regions and amongst the micro regions and the areas that were left unharmed. So far so good. We still have grapes hanging, as opposed to some other regions of France. I'm sure you, if you're in the wine scene, you've heard about Chablis. So Chablis 2024, there won't be any, apparently. So obviously a region that has been very much influenced by wine. I'll just give you a little bit of a sense of place. So this is actually a corner of the winery. The winery is on the right. It's actually our wine shop as well, Boutique Vini. This gives you a little bit of an insight on the place itself. Obviously, very picturesque, very typical Rhine landscape, I would say, and architecture. Keep in mind that we're in the Rhine area. We're culturally, Alsace is deep down an Alemannic and a Saxon culture with a French touch, or vice versa, French wine region with an Alemannic touch. So we grow Riesling, we grow Gewürztraminer, we grow Pinots, Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, like Burgundy does. So we're really at that crossroad culturally between France and Germany, and we have that great luck to have about 13, well, exactly 13 grape varieties, even a little more, because now people are starting to plant a little bit outside of the appellation rules and appellation laws. But we are the one wine region that labels its wines according to the grape varieties. So which is probably what makes Alsace a very easy region to read at first. It's a very easy region to approach. You will find wines with the grape variety clearly marked on the label. It's actually the only wine region in France, and I believe in Europe, where the grape variety has to be 100% of the stated grape. So if you have a Riesling from Alsace, it actually has by law to be 100% of that grape. And then Alsace is also an easy region to read in the way that Alsace has only two levels of quality, which would be typically, I would say, Alsace, so the classical textbook appellation level, and the, I would say, Grand Cru, so the Grand Cru level, the Grand Cru tier, which would be the minor part of the production, with a meaningful 8% of the appellation being Grand Cru. And so Grand Crus, 51 Grand Crus. I'm pretty sure you've worked this. Alsace is a fairly easy region to first approach, but then everything is in the details. As soon as you're going to start to talk about the details, this is where it becomes much more complex. What I'm showing on the screen at the moment is actually the geologic map of the region. Obviously, there's a written exam at the end of that class. So if I were you, this would be the time I would pay very close attention. It's frustrating not to have your faces on the screen, because typically people laugh at that stage. I hope you're laughing. Otherwise, you're probably very worried. So Alsace is a very complex wine region when it comes to geology. It comes without saying that even the best sommeliers of the region very hardly master the geology of the place. But if I can leave you with one idea in mind, it's that Alsace is obviously a fascinating wine region, and I'm sure you've had some absolutely top wines from the region. But keep in mind that it's probably also one of the most complex if you really go in depth. On purpose, I don't say complicated, because there's way enough reading keys or ways of approaching Alsace, entryways into Alsace, to make sure that there will be a profile of wine that caters to everyone, and a level of complexity or a degree of understanding that still doesn't feel too overwhelming to the people that approach the region. But if you really want to go in depth, in just a word, this is actually the geologic map that we have to deal with on a daily basis. This is the geologic map of Rivière. So this would be the very central part directly around Rivière. It's our playground. That's where we grow our grapes. About 90% of our ownings are in the direct surroundings of Rivière. And so when you approach Alsace, you might be surprised with the number of grape varieties that we grow. We're pretty much par with Châteauneuf-du-Pape. and we grow them as single grapes, and we bottle them as single grapes, but for a very good reason. We have grape varieties that are obviously very different from one end of the spectrum, which would be Riesling, which would be bone dry mineral and typically more of a seafood slash dry wine textbook example, to probably what you have most exotic in the profile of wines, which is what we're supplying to you, our classic Gewürztraminer, in an elegant style, but probably one of the iconic and probably the most aromatic grape in the world, without a doubt. If you've had the Gewürztraminer once in your life, it is one grape that left a strong impression on you. And this is to us a fantastic playground, because we are able to grow grape varieties on the same village with very, very particular soil diversity, and obviously adapting the grape variety to the soil. The reason why we grow 7 when it comes to Hugel, but 13 grapes in Alsace, is because we have that soil type diversity that really allows us to adapt the grape variety to the soil type and make for a high quality wine out of each of those grape varieties. Okay, it's about time we talk about Gewürztraminer. I managed to sneak a bottle out of the tasting room, so I have it in front of me, which is going to be a great help for me, because Gewürztraminer can show in very, very different aspects and profile. If I had to leave you with a feeling or an impression of what we do in terms of Gewürztraminer, this is probably a more toned down or restrained expression of what that grape is able to give you. The frustration that people very often have with Gewürztraminer as a grape to produce, what that producers very often have with that grape, is that very often with this grape, less is more. And you have to learn to be humble. With Gewürztraminer teaches you to be humble, because it is a grape variety that very easily has a tendency to overdo, whether it's in terms of residual sugar, whether it's in terms of aromatics in residual sugar. If you over-ripen it, typically the acidity levels would drop, and it's typically a grape that has very low acidity, which can be very frustrating at times, because we're a northern region, we're a northern climate, and we're a northern climate that typically tends to do quite well with high acidity. We actually advocate and we claim our wines to be high acid and northern climate. Gewürztraminer is probably the exception. As far northern as we have, as we can be, Gewürztraminer will never have too much acidity. It's one of those great varieties where you always go. It would have been perfect with a little bit more acidity. So the more you're trying to push it, the more you're trying to ripen it far, pick it late, pick it with botrytis. It's very often not a good idea. Botrytis wines, it's a specialty of ours, but we would only do it in very, very particular conditions and in very, very particular vintages. Most of the time, this is what we aim for on Gewürztraminer, meaning a more gastronomic, if I may call it that way, example of that grape. We can't play too much with acidity. We don't have it, so we play with bitterness. We play with phenolics. We play with that natural opulence of the grape, and we work with as high as we can of a dry extract, just to make sure that, depending on the picking date, we're still able to make a wine that is, if not dry, at least off dry. And it's actually a great variety that does extremely well in pairings. Just every once in a while, I meet a French sommelier that tells me, "Oh, I love Gewürztraminer, but the problem is I can't have it on the list because it goes with absolutely nothing." And that is wrong. That is very wrong. The problem is Gewürztraminer doesn't pair the way everybody pairs it typically. Typically, when you pair a wine with food, you would pair according to the protein. and this is still a little bit of especially when it comes to French cuisine and Occidental cuisine, it's something that is quite prominent in the way we perceive a pairing and we perceive a combination with wine. We want to know what type of protein we're going to have. I think Gewürztraminer just doesn't work that way. Gewürztraminer works with the seasoning, works with the way that the cooking method, works with everything around that protein. Typically, this is a wine. I very often call it the last resort before beer. Typically, dishes that you would not typically have wine with, Gewürztraminer would be a very good resort. Most Asian cuisines have become more or less a classic pairing. In terms of classic out of the classics, this is a wine that we typically pour with cheese. This would be our cheese wine in my area. On the cheese platter, this is probably the most polyvalent wine you could find. But I feel that very often we're limiting it a little bit to that use, which is a great shame to me, because I'm not your typical French. I probably cook Thai cuisine at home more often than I cook French, and this is, in my opinion, the best way for this wine to express. It needs bold flavors. Don't ask me why. I can't quite explain it, but there is something that just clicks when it comes to coconut milk. Coconut milk and Gewürztraminer, they're just naturals. There's something with Gewürztraminer that typically calls for flavors that are too bold for classical pairings. Amongst others, I'm going to name smoked herring, smoked salmon, smoked haddock, smoked sturgeon, smoked meat would work very, very well with Gewürztraminer. It's a type of flavor that typically has a tendency to overpower wine very easily. It won't with Gewürztraminer. It's a great variety that typically does very, very well with spices or very herby dishes. If you have something extremely garlicky, if you have a dish that is very cilantro-based, coriander-based, cumin, even hot, you can go very, very hot with Gewürztraminer thanks to that little bit of residual sugar. The classic Gewürz that you have would be about 10, 12 grams of residual sugar, so you can really play with spices. The sweetness is going to calm down a little bit the spice level, especially if you're having something a little bit hot or very ginger based. And then out of my personal lovings and personal pleasures, it's everything linked to dehydration or concentration of flavors. As soon as you have flavors that are very, very concentrated, meaning typically charcuteries and cured meats, this is something that I would really highly recommend. There's no cheese platter and cheese and charcuterie platter at home that goes without a glass of Gewürztraminer these days. So it's a great variety that needs you to dare a little bit. There's an element of you need to dare to first of all pour wine with those very, very spicy or hearty or powerful or very umami Peking duck. The crispy skin Peking duck would be another one of my favorites. So you need those umami, oyster sauce, hoisin, fish sauce, ginger, garlic, etc. Those bold flavors, they will go very well with Gewürztraminer. But the first thing you need to know about Gewürztraminer, really dare to do those pairings. I think that's all I have time for. You have 3 minutes for questions, which is less than I've been offered to leave you. It's a pitch. I'm sorry, I've been speaking very fast and a lot. This is recorded. Don't hesitate to rewatch it. Even better, don't hesitate to come and visit us. And that's your introduction to the Hugel Gewürztraminer. The next step is in the glass.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. That's fantastic and gives us a nice overview. Just you had a slide that you sort of brushed past earlier that just showed the portfolio. Is probably just worth putting that on the screen for a second. And whilst Jean Frederick is doing that, just if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask or pop them on the chat. But this is, I think, really nice photo that sort of shows the portfolio there, and obviously the classic Gewürztraminer is the wine that we feature across the Hotel de Van on the core list. We did try and get to the bottom of why your colours and trim back colours are so similar. I think we got a half an answer yesterday from trim back, but
I can give you the full extent and the full picture if you have a minute and a half.
go on then, a minute and a half.
1916, Alsace is in the middle of World War One, and the Alsace youngsters are drafted in the German army 6 months ahead of the rest of Germany. And so, for that reason, my great-grandfather is sent to a friend of the family by his father in Berlin, who is the head, the general director of a company called Maggi, Maggi, tubes and soups and bouillons and stuff. And he's basically the head of the company. And Maggi at the time does the first marketing study to know which colors are the most eye-catching to the eye of the consumer. And they find out that would be Maggi. Sure, you know that one. And they discover at the time that it's a combination of 3 colors, yellow and red, a particular type of yellow, Pantone 122C, and red with accents of gold that are the most eye-catching on the shelf and that represent the highest quality. Turns out guess who's an intern in the marketing department at that time? Great-grandpa. The war comes to an end. He's drafted in the territorial defense, doesn't fire a single shot during the whole war. And in 1921, after finishing his time at Maggi, he comes back to Alsace with plenty of new ideas, new exposure to marketing. And in his briefcase, the yellow, the red, and the gold, that are still the colors of the Hugel packaging, and the daughter of the general director, who's my great-grandmother. And since then, the Hugel label has always been showing the Maggi colors, which have been vastly imitated in Alsace. But I must say, out of all the people that have adopted that yellow color, Trimbach are the only ones that actually asked.
I'm sure that doesn't 100% match with the trim back version, but very nice to hear the story as well. Are there any other questions from anyone on the chat? Anyone want to ask anyone any questions before we wrap up there? Okay, well, I am conscious of time, so I'll just finish off. As always, just firstly, thank you to Jean-Frédéric for today's session, but also just a reminder that we do have our second introductory session, which is to Burgundy on Monday. And yes, I'm well aware it's Bank Holiday Monday, but it will still take place on Monday at 3 o'clock. So hopefully I'll see many of you join me on Monday at 3 o'clock for an introduction to Burgundy. And then we'll be joined by a number of our Burgundarian producers through the rest of that week. So thanks again for everyone to join the call. Thank you to Hugel for hosting today, and have a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jean-Frédéric.